Hey guys, welcome to Channel Surfing, the IGN TV podcast.
Surfing of the channel.
The surfing of the channels.
I'm trying to come up with a new theme song. And it's...
But our theme song's a classic.
Okay.
So Star Wars Celebration was this past weekend, and...
That wasn't busy.
It wasn't busy at all. I was saying it's interesting because, you know, look, it's like the tiny modicum of, like, you know, in the grand scheme of visibility this job gives us is nothing, but still appreciated when once in a while people come up and are like, hey.
Very appreciated.
Very appreciated. There's something about Star Wars.
They come up and they say, hey, and then they punch you in the face.
Yeah.
That's not what happens, thank God.
Star Wars Celebration, and this happened to me 3 years ago, last time I did it, but especially this time, it was very concentrated, like way more people coming up to me than I'm ever used to. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it had to do with my Clone Wars coverage, because that was kind of the lean years for Star Wars.
Sure.
And so there was like a lot of people were like, oh, I like
I think it has a lot to do with your general fabulousness.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I'm feeling like that's the...
I will say, though, that a few people were like, loved, hey man, big channel surfing fan.
Really?
Super appreciated, and it makes me feel super bad how infrequently we've been doing this podcast. So we'll try to
I
do
blame
better.
you.
It's
But it's also my fault. I was tragically not at Celebration.
Yeah.
I was in Calgary on the set of Fargo, which I'm allowed to say, as it turns out. I'm not allowed to say anything I learned there, but it was cool.
Yeah.
But one of the actors, this was amazing. So this is while this was happening for you. This blew my mind. One of the actors that was like a day player that day comes up to me. Like, I saw him, and obviously this isn't giving anything away to say that he was bloody.
There will
like,
be
there will be
violence.
blood. There will be violence.
Yeah.
It is Fargo. And so I look at him and I'm like, rough day. And he comes up to me and he goes, are you Roth? And I'm like, yes. Like thinking I've done something terribly wrong. And he knew us. Yeah. He knew IGN, and it was so wonderful and flattering.
No,
and then later we're huge in Canada.
We're huge in Canada, and we're huge Star Wars fans. So
it's two great places to be.
Yeah, no, a lot of very nice people at Celebration. So if you're one of those people who came up, thank you, very appreciated, and we'll try to be more consistent.
And I would say the same thing to Calgary.
Thank you, Calgary in general, yes. So because it's been like 2.5 or 3 weeks since we did the last podcast, on the last podcast, we were talking about the Coach revival, right? And then very shortly after, I know it was before we posted the podcast because I made a note of it. I even said, if we knew about the Full House revival, when we would have talked about it, the Full House revival, of course, but it broke right after we recorded.
Yeah.
But since then, not only did we hear that the Full House revival was possible, but now it's happening. Yeah. It's 100% confirmed.
Fullest of houses.
Well, it's called
Fuller
House. Yes. And so, yeah, Netflix is bringing back Full House. 13 new episodes. Fuller House.
Fullest of Fuller. You know, I don't think it's a bad move on their part in the sense of, like, it obviously hits the very obvious nostalgia note of bringing back. We saw sort of what a frenzy that surrounded Girl Meets War. Girl
Meets Werewolf. That'd be an amazing show.
Girl Meets War.
Girl Meets War would also be an amazing show.
Whole different series. That obviously there was a fan frenzy around that for people that had been attached. I think the same thing will happen with Full House. And it hits a target audience, if you're going to talk about quadrants. Yeah. It hits a target audience that Netflix hasn't really hit in their original programming yet, which is family. So it has, like, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, they have the DreamWorks deal, and they're doing like the new How to Train Your Dragon show, but that's it's more recent stuff, whereas, like, this has, like, Girl Meets World is a good analogy because it can be both. It can be the multi-generation thing. I grew up with that, and I have a kid who maybe will watch it.
But I even think that I think the DreamWorks stuff is going to be great, but I even actually think that that's not so much a full family show in the sense of, like, mom, dad, young kids, and even possibly grandparents. Like, I feel like Fuller House is hitting potentially all of those targets. I also, there's a part of me that feels like I am living within a surreal fever dream on television, because let's talk about the plot. Yeah,
can we talk about the plot? I mean, just the fact that DJ is now named DJ Tanner -Fuller, so they can justify the title in universe. Because the original show was just called Full House, because it's a full house.
It was plenty of people in the house, but now it's Fuller.
But now it's Fuller House, so it's like, if you didn't watch the original, why is this called Fuller House? Oh, because her name's Fuller, see?
It's a double meaning.
So she's But the setup is hysterical because if you describe this someone, it's like DJ Tanner Fuller, pregnant and recently widowed, living in San Francisco.
So dark.
Yes. And now it's about her pregnant and widowed. She has 2 boys. And guess what? Stephanie, her sister, who's an aspiring musician now, and Kimmy Gibbler.
So Kimmy is coming back.
Kimmy and her feisty teenage daughter, who I bet's a little chip off the old block.
I bet she is.
They all move in together.
Yeah.
What do you got then? Got a Fuller House.
Fuller House. And I think what's crazy to me about this is that you made this joke earlier, and it's really true. In the world of sitcoms, death is less dark than divorce.
Right, because they had to make that decision. They're like, because they didn't want they didn't want the dynamic to be like, 2 parents and they wanted to somewhat match the original.
Yeah, except instead of 3 adult men this time, and there's
3 adult women, and 3 kids.
See how that changes everything?
The 4th on the way. But they're like, but if she's just married, and plus it's a little harder to justify why she'd need help and everything. Yeah. And so they had to make that decision. Well, they could be divorced, and the dad could pop up once in a while. No.
You know what?
Kill him. Kill him dead.
Anybody who has the notion that it's hard to justify why you need help with children has never been around them for longer than 20 seconds.
Right.
You need like 15 people per child.
Not to mention housing is so expensive in San Francisco that of course you feel like everyone move in.
Well, that's the other.
Try to afford this place.
That's the other interesting thing is that. To me, it does hit on like the realities of our economic time where people really, single moms, if you're going to live in a house like that, you're going to need some help.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of Fuller House.
Let's do it.
And the fact that John Stamos made the announcement on Jimmy Fallon that this was happening for sure, and is attached as a producer. So guess what? There's no way Uncle Jesse ain't showing up. In the premiere.
Uncle Jesse will show up. I don't think Uncle Jesse will necessarily be a part of every episode.
No.
But he'll be around to lend his guidance and support.
He'll be around, pop up. But then Lori Loughlin did an interview today, because now everyone wants to get the scoop on the Fuller House.
Of course.
Saying that it sounds like the rest of the people, your Saget, your Couliers, and of course your Olsen twins, no one else is signed on. They'd like them all to pop up, and they'll see what happens.
What do you give you have to literally find a golden hen to give the Olsen twins anything that they don't already have.
And I don't know. It's like, I don't want to get into people's personal psyche. Because I do. But I will say I've noticed when there's been a couple times when it's like a Full House reunion, just meaning like they all got together for a gathering, and the Olsen twins are never there.
Yeah.
But you do have to remember, they were freaking young.
They were babies.
They wouldn't have the same connection. They might have I remember those people being nice to me when I was a little kid, but they wouldn't have the same connection all the rest of the cast, including the kids who grew up on the show as older teenagers would have.
No, of course they would. They were really, how old were they when the show ended?
I don't know. They must have been nearing 10?
Yeah, but very young. Yeah. And if you think about your memories of that age and the things that you did, you don't have that level of attachment.
And already just counting money. So.
And they were already just Scrooge McDucking down the piles of gold.
So if they do, because they don't need the money and there's not an amount that I don't think they can meet their quote, it would have to be I'm doing this, we're doing this, has a thank you sort of thing. I would not expect, if they get them, it's a one-off. I don't expect them popping in and out. And even, who would play Michelle?
Exactly. That's my question, is how do you even do it? It doesn't even work. It's madness, really. And also, they don't do much on camera. They don't do much acting. I think they're
One of them did Weeds. That was the last big thing I remember. Yeah.
Which one? Was it Mary-Kate or was it Ashley?
I think it was Ashley.
Work it out.
I think it was Ashley. She was at TCA to talk about it. It was an amazing moment. So Fuller House, people, get ready. They named her DJ Tanner Fuller.
It's so amazing.
It's pretty amazing. All right.
But their profit margin just exploded even more.
Yeah. We live in amazing times. Let's move on to Marvel and their TV universe and what's happening on the ABC front, because it's a little confusing.
Yeah.
And, but you are dealing with both Marvel playing things close to the vest, and ABC is an odd network. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but ABC is very notable. If you look right now at all the networks, is the only one who has not officially renewed anything. And they do this every year. Shows we know How to Get Away with Murder and Scandal are freaking coming back.
Yes.
But they don't give those early renewals that the other networks do to the the gimmies for whatever reason.
Well, they like to keep it suspenseful, just like with their programming.
Ooh, yes, just like Shonda Rhimes has taught them to be suspenseful.
This is how you end a season, people.
And so I remember last year it was like, is S.H.I.E.L.D. getting renewed? Very likely. Is Agent Carter happening? Maybe.
Unlikely.
Well, no, I'm saying last year. I'm saying last year. And we didn't know until 3 days, like right before their upfront. It was like they put out the announcement all at once. S.H.I.E.L.D. renewed, Agent Carter ordered. So now we've got, again, is S.H.I.E.L.D. coming back? Probably. And especially because of all this news coming out, because we heard that there was a S.H.I.E.L.D. Spin-off in development.
Which would be very odd to have a S.H.I.E.L.D. spin-off with no S.H.I.E.L.D.
With no S.H.I.E.L.D. Yeah, 2 years in. It's not like S.H.I.E.L.D.'s been on for 8 years and you're doing the Frasier.
And then you're doing the Frasier bridge.
Yeah.
Does it seem to you that no spin-off has felt quite as different tonally as Frasier to Cheers? Let's discuss that later.
Lou Grant to Mary Tyler Moore. I'm going real old school. It changed from a half-hour comedy to a 1 hour drama.
Okay.
Everything. There you go.
We're going to swing back to this at a later date.
Yeah. Trapper John to MASH. I'm just going to go 70s people. But yeah, so yeah, exactly. They're not going to do a spin-off if they're canceling S.H.I.E.L.D. 2 years in. So S.H.I.E.L.D.'s coming back.
Okay.
Even though it is funny because S.H.I.E.L.D.'s not a big hit, right?
No, it's not.
It's doing okay.
It's doing okay. More of the genre fans should have climbed back on board and given it another chance. I hope that people do in between seasons catch up.
That has they're hearing a lot more people say, "Hey, it got really, really fun. You should catch up." So S.H.I.E.L.D. we think is coming back. The spinoff is a possibility, which we'll talk a bit more in a second. And then it broke that one of the trades broke that John Ridley, the Oscar-winning writer of 12 Years a Slave, who currently has American Crime on ABC, has another Marvel project that he's developing, not the spinoff of S.H.I.E.L.D. for ABC. So suddenly you've got the potential for those 3 shows plus the question mark of Agent Carter.
Yeah.
But then the more you hear about these shows, the less you're like...
The more you feel like Agent Carter was probably going to end up being a one-off season.
Right, which is a bummer.
It is a bummer because it was great. And I'm not sure if people didn't get on board because they had already deboarded the S.H.I.E.L.D. train and the ABC Marvel train. I'm not sure why it didn't take off. It was the
reviews were there for sure.
The reviews were there. The critical response was there.
Yeah. I mean, so we shouldn't count anything out because I do think there's a lot of different factors here. Just the fact that when you look at S.H.I.E.L.D.'s ratings, this is not a show that you'd think they'd be like, maybe next year we'll have 3 Marvel shows on the air, Let's
talk about the spinoff and what... Well, you don't want to go there yet.
Oh, no, I think we should.
Am I jumping there?
Because it wouldn't. Did you see the news last night about the spinoff?
What was the news last night? Well, I was
Mockingbird and Hunter. It's that's what it looks to be. That they're signing Adrian Palicki.
That's surprising.
I get it though because I didn't think it would be Skye because she's been too integral to S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. Deathlock seemed like a possibility, but when you think about this season, they brought her in. They quickly upped her to a series regular, and so it kind of made sense to me when they did that. And then I heard about the spinoff that might be to kind of lock her in.
I guess I thought she was actually more headed towards, and this may still happen, towards at least some kind of a role in the movies.
Right. So here's my question: I had a tweet a couple weeks ago before the John Ridley project. We'll talk more about that in a second. Was announced that was saying. In my dream wish world for how ABC and Marvel decide to do things, next year, S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Carter, and the spin-off all are like 10 to 13 episodes.
Perfect.
And we rotate through all 3 through the season.
That would be ideal. I don't think we're going to get that.
I don't think we're going to get exactly that, although I think we're going to get a bridge again, and I don't know if it's the spin-off or it's the John Ridley show.
I don't know. I mean, well, it depends on what the John Ridley show is, which character it is, or I'm assuming that it will be...
Right. Something.
Well, I guess I shouldn't assume anything, really.
And let's talk about, and this is way more dubious than the Mockingbird thing, which is Deadline and I'm sure is right. But there was a very sort of guy on Reddit who's had some things come through before, post, and then he removed it, which if you could say maybe that's because he was saying something that he shouldn't have said. But that it might be Miss Marvel, the teenage new Miss Marvel.
Which is an interesting marriage that creator and Miss Marvel, but Miss Marvel's a great fit for ABC.
It is a great fit for ABC. It's a little weird because her character in the comics is all inspired by Captain Marvel, and this would then have her beat the Captain Marvel movie.
Yeah, which
they'd have to change that. Yeah.
That is another confusing element. I think that element is a little confusing, but I mean, kick butt teen girl. It's great for ABC.
It is, and they said that she probably wouldn't be in the costume through most of that first season, and it would be a shorter season. My biggest thing here is because S.H.I.E.L.D.'s not a huge hit, I don't see ABC saying, yeah, we're going to give 3 nights of programming over to Marvel. There will be time sharing involved, and at the least, it's I think the S.H.I.E.L.D. split with one of those shows in the middle. But I mean, honestly, because S.H.I.E.L.D. has gotten a lot better, but I know you and I agree, and I think more and more people agree that heavily serialized shows are better when they're shorter seasons.
Absolutely.
I mean, even the people involved on S.H.I.E.L.D., it's tough to do 22. There's always going to be those episodes that are like, what are we doing right now,
I think that's kind of the perfect answer for this, because it's not, also as a viewer, I think you're more inclined to kind of like invest if you know it doesn't. It feels overwhelming at this point, I think, for viewers, because there's so much media. It's it's not when this model was invented anymore, and because there's so much of it, it's like, oh, it's only 10 episodes. I can do that, because even if I fall behind, it's easy enough to catch up, you know? But when it's 22, once you fall in a certain amount behind, you no longer feel as invested to catch up unless you are paid to do so.
Right. It is tougher. And I do think that, again, knowing that there's bigger corporate reasons that these are all happening, involving ABC, Disney, and Marvel all being one corporate entity, I feel like maybe they would think it's in their best interest to do less S.H.I.E.L.D. and then timeshare, because it's kind of keeping the Marvel brand alive on ABC, but you can cycle through these different stories and characters. And obviously if one super took off, then that could get expanded.
But I also feel like in terms of with Mockingbird, I mean, I feel like the way to do that is have them go off on like a very specific mission.
Kind of like Agent Carter did.
Like for an arc, and have that be the crux of that series for that season, and then maybe they get another mission, you know?
Just even S.H.I.E.L.D., the way they split the season, I mean, it was funny, Joshua, comics editor, mistakenly thought it was in season 3, and I understood why he thought that, because the split
was so different.
It was like, it's like 2 seasons.
It felt like 2 seasons too. I mean, I guess, I knew this wasn't going to happen, but as a viewer, like the thing that I would like to see spin off is the Inhumans. It's not going to happen because there's a movie.
Right.
But like, and maybe this just speaks more to what
honestly, it's probably too big for budget-wise.
I know, because you can't do all those makeups and the effects and stuff to actually make it work, and you'll get that in the movie. But it's just like what I was most interested in from this season, and what I would like to. And it's still such a mystery that it'd be fun to go explore that and like see how they behave on their own.
Right. But it's funny, just wrapping up here on this topic, I think it's funny because right now it's all very murky and strange. And then I think, we're very close to upfronts. I think in less than 4 weeks, we'll suddenly know.
Have some answers.
Like, here's the plan, here's what they're doing. And I think it won't be traditional. I think it's going to be, because people were complaining, like, and I understand the worry about, like, oversaturation and whatnot. But on the Marvel side, they haven't had more than one show at a time. I mean, Daredevil's kind of an outlier, or all the Netflix shows are, because the way they put them up. It's like, but most people are going to consume those in a weekend. It's like really S.H.I.E.L.D. and Carter, and those didn't air at the same time. So I think it's going to still be something like that next year. But
we'll find out.
We'll find out soon. We need to talk here about something sad now.
Oh no, we're bringing it down.
Bringing it down.
Okay.
And this news is now, again, because we're so behind on channel surfing, several weeks old, although still in flux.
Oh, I know where you're going.
You know where I'm going with this, which is we have not talked about David Lynch leaving the Twin Peaks.
This is a bitter cup of coffee.
This is awful.
This is like a This is like a watery, grainy, bitter, nasty cup of coffee.
This is spoiled cherry pie.
Yeah.
You can't tell us we're getting new Twin Peaks from David Lynch, and then we don't get new Twin Peaks from David Lynch.
That's like, okay, so tomorrow morning when you wake up and it's your birthday, there's going to be a unicorn and a pony and unlimited ice cream, and you wake up And
they punch you in the face.
instead they greet you with you're wearing a retainer, and your older brother pulls it out, and then it snaps back into your mouth, which is actually how my older brother used to wake me up.
I was going to say this is oddly specific, but now I know it's like childhood trauma. Okay.
And then all you're doing all day is math.
Yeah, okay, yes.
It's just rude.
It just sucks.
It's just rude.
So yeah, I mean, look, people probably know. If you don't, it was a weird thing where it was during WonderCon, actually, I believe. Because it was rumors were spreading at WonderCon, and then that the Twin Peaks revival was off, and then Lynch did that series of tweets saying he had left the project, and it was like the way he phrased it was something about like they were not giving them the money that I thought was needed to tell the story right. But it was strange, and I will say here, it's easy to like attack Showtime, but in the wake of this, and the more I thought about it, and then the more Showtime has now talked about it, it's like, I feel it's a weird situation with, let's face it, a guy that we're both big fans of, who's a freaking weird guy.
Well, it's funny because our boss, Chris Carl, and I were talking about this shortly after it happened. I want to make a quick correction. It was my night guard that he pulled out and snapped back in, not my retainer. In any event, David Lynch, I think we theorize that it's possible, even on a subconscious level, that he got scared. Yeah. Because one of the things, the last project that he did was Inland Empire, I believe was the last movie he released. It's
been a while.
Not well received.
No.
And if I'm wrong, correct me, but I believe it was Inland Empire, which was definitely not well received. Twin Peaks is such a legacy. It really, people talk about how it changed television, but it did. It was ahead of its time. And I think there's probably a tremendous amount of pressure in coming back to that. And I'm not saying he's not up to the task, but he could have gotten scared and asked for more money than he knew he wasn't going to get the money that he was asking for. Possible.
We can only speculate. He was the one through the years who seemed the most like hesitant to do it because of course there would always be questions, especially the way it ended. Will there ever be more Twin Peaks? And where the cast would be like, yeah, it'd be great. He always was very not jumping at the bit to do it, which is one of the reasons it was such a surprise to hear he was doing it. They have now, David Nevins, the head of Showtime, did an interview, and he said, he basically said, like, they were taken aback by this because they thought negotiating with him.
Right.
When on a Sunday he just did this tweet saying, I'm out. Yeah. Like, that's the way he announced it, which isn't great. I feel fine saying, like, that's not a great way to handle your business, you know? It's like tweeting, like, I'm not doing this when, like, they thought that he was in the middle of negotiating. And he said, he got some crap for this, Nevins, from like hardcore Twin Peaks fan, because he said, I don't know if this is a negotiation tactic or if he got cold feet. Yeah. I think that's fair to say because some people did think that's what he was doing, the negotiation tactic, being like, I'm out because this will like get them to throw some more money in.
I don't think so.
But I think it's more likely that he's like, maybe I don't want to do this.
Yeah, because I have David Lynch earrings. Yeah. Like I love David Lynch. I'm a huge fan, and he's never been driven by money. He never sort of.
And it wasn't his salary. Yeah. It was like the budget for Twin Peaks. It was apparently from what we hear, it was the debate over how much money they were going to spend per episode.
No, I know, but even in terms of his creative projects, it's not like there was a ton of money behind 90% of what he did ever. And so I think he decided for whatever reason, and this is pure conjecture, I don't know. I wanted Twin Peaks to happen so badly. Right. Not without him, we'll get to that. I think he just decided it wasn't a good idea. Yeah. That to leave that as it was, maybe ultimately it is the right thing. It's very disappointing for me as a fan. But I will say I do not want to see a Twin Peaks that doesn't have Lynch attached to it.
Absolutely not. And I do think Showtime knows better because we heard they could still do it without him, and they could. But I think they know better than and so
because you can.
Yeah, just because you can, you shouldn't. The day this all happened, there was also I saw a lot of tweets of like, give him whatever he wants. And it's like, let's be realistic here, people. Like, Showtime is not known for being notoriously cheap or anything. Yeah. It's like, but there will be a limit. And we don't know how big an audience there is for Twin Peaks coming back. It was a big hit out of the gate that then dissipated in the ratings. It's got a cult audience, a loyal cult audience, but that doesn't mean it's going to come back and be, I think, this is a weird example because it was a much shorter window. But when 24 came back, it wasn't like, oh, it's a blockbuster again. Yeah. It did okay, So it realistically, no, Showtime shouldn't give him whatever he wants if he's like, I need 30 million an episode.
Right.
No.
And we don't know, we really don't know what he was asking for per episode or where the negotiations landed, but it does sound like he decided he was done negotiating.
Right, because it sounded like Showtime was like, this is normal part of the process, we'll work it out. Like, there will be a compromise, you know? He's asking for this huge amount, we're asking for this, we'll meet in the middle, because that's how this is done.
Right.
And then he walked, and yeah, I do think it was, whether you say it's cold feet, like I can't deliver, or more like maybe we shouldn't do this.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, either way, and again, like this isn't to say that he can't deliver, because I still believe in David Lynch.
Yeah.
But he may have decided that he didn't want to take the risk.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't be his vision anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
And look, I selfishly want this to happen. I do hope they can work it out. If he feels like, you know, yeah, I should do this, I want to do this. And a few months ago, it seemed like he was all psyched up to do it. Because I want to see it. The fact we keep hearing that they did write all 9 scripts.
Yeah.
You know, it's just to have it be that close and to not happen is heartbreaking.
And even if they don't do it, then just release the scripts.
Release the scripts, right? Yeah. We'll see.
I'll
I mean, this is
scripts.
still kind of up in the air because no one said anything definitively. If we don't hear anything by TCAs, trust me, it'll be a big topic with Showtime.
Somebody could do a graphic novel of those scripts.
There you go. There you go. So we'll see. But
and then animate it.
To think it's coming and then it doesn't happen.
It's horrible.
Yeah, we'll see.
Bitter cup of coffee.
We'll see. Bitter cup of coffee. All right, let's touch briefly upon Star Wars Celebration, which I know on Keeping It Real this week there'll be a ton to talk about because there was, nothing to talk about. Nothing happened with Star Wars movies there. But I did want to mention a couple of things that were either directly about TV shows or kind of in relation to TV shows. And if you look on the site, if you were to look at our Star Wars Rebels object page, IGN Star Wars Rebels, search for it, you'll find all sorts of reactions and write-ups and videos that we did specific to stuff that they showed there. It was awesome. The season premiere is awesome for season 2. They did not say the premiere date, though, by the way, which is kind of a bummer. But I did want to mention one thing in relation to the films, because it is TV-related, which is the Rogue One panel, which was amazing. And it was really funny because it wasn't full. And it was like, wow, people really...
The Rogue One panel, the room wasn't full?
No.
Madness, people, because I gotta say, Rogue One is probably, I don't know, it's neck and neck that I'm excited for 7 and Rogue One. I
mean, 7 wins, but I'm super psyched for Rogue One.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah, and again, it was promoted as a conversation with Gareth Edwards and Josh Trank, and then Josh Trank ended up being there. But no matter what, it was shocking that it wasn't full because it's like, guys, these are 2 new Star Wars movies that we know nothing about that they're going to reveal some stuff about.
Yeah.
You know, they have to fill an hour. There'll be some stuff here, so it was crazy it wasn't full. I wish it wasn't like empty. It just, there was up top, there was some seats open. The Rogue One looked awesome. The fact that there was a teaser was amazing before it's even started shooting. But there was an interesting moment because let's face facts. They know they're planning out what they're going to talk about. They never went to audience questions, and so there was a question. You know, they brought up, hey, you know, this is the same time frame as Star Wars Rebels. To Kathleen Kennedy and Kira Hart were asked this from Lucasfilm. Same time frame as Rebels. How about that? And they were just like, yeah, it is.
Isn't that interesting?
And there's opportunities there. Which, again, the fact that they thought they verbalized that at all.
It's totally her. Go ahead.
And so...
It's totally her.
And so I, as someone who's a big fan of Star Wars Rebels and is very curious how connected they'll go here. Do
you want to talk about what my Tourette's is about when you...
It's totally her. It's totally her. Because I could really mean anything. It's like a ghost you're thinking of. It's her.
It's one right behind you.
Right. It's that one from the 1800s. I had even asked Kinberg. I interviewed Kinberg this weekend, and you know, he's not only is he an executive producer on Rebels, but he's
Simon Kinberg.
He's Kinberg. He's just Kinberg. He's heavily involved in the Star Wars movies as well. And like, look, whether it be Ahsoka or anyone, you, at some point they have to take a character they introduce in animation and bring them into live action. And he gave the non-answer of like, wouldn't that be great, you know? But I do feel like Rogue One seems highly likely, and I do think it'll be Hera or Sabine. I think
that's who you think it'll be.
One of those two. It won't be Ahsoka, Kanan, or Ezra because they were so specific that this movie wouldn't involve Jedis or the Force, and that's kind of the point. And then Zeb is kind of a whole thing unto himself. So I think Sabine or Hera. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. I definitely think it's going to be. I mean, they've been hinting all along about how Rebels would tie into the films, and so I do think that it's going to be a character from Rebels. She's a rebel fighter.
Do you think that Felicity Jones plays specifically? Okay.
I do.
Because that I'm not sure about yet, but I think it's a possibility.
No, I do. I think it's funny because there were so many rumors about who Felicity Jones was playing, and I've heard so many people adamantly believing in their theory. I had a theory last week that I, at the moment, was adamantly believing. I have a friend who's convinced that she's Leia. I do not think she's Leia at all. I thought that because there were rumors around bounty hunters that maybe she was a bounty hunter, that would then decide, sort of have that arc where she decided to become a soldier, and stop being a mercenary. But now
and start getting real.
Yeah. This is the story of 7 bounty hunters. But now I do think it'll be one of them. I think it will be her as one of them.
Yeah, I do think it's a possibility, but even if it's not her playing one of them, I feel like one of them could pop up. All they said is that she's playing a rebel soldier.
Do you think it would be too weird to have the lead of that movie be based on in an animated?
Not necessarily, but I also even thought about, like, right away I thought, okay, Sabine is kind of like not white ethnically, like she's an alien, so it's like, but they kind of give her like a, yellowish skin, like a, and then I did think about, do you put Felicity Jones in green makeup with tentacles? And
you do.
You do. You absolutely do. But I do think that is a discussion that they have.
She can still look way hot.
Oh, I mean, look, that Twi'lek or Twi'lek, I know people debate that. They're always hot. So I don't know, though, the answer to that question. I feel they're more inclined to have Felicity Jones not have green makeup.
Be a human
and
have
play a human and to have aliens around her. But I still think...
And that's been the tradition. That would be interesting to have a Star Wars movie that had in the lead a non-human character.
Yeah, and I think we'll get it eventually. I don't know if it'll be this movie because it's the first of the spin-offs or anthology films.
It's the whole universe.
But I feel if nothing else, it's like, we need a pilot. We need a great pilot to do this important part
of the mission.
And here comes Hera. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's I'm hopeful.
And then who would you like to be cast?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I mean, hey, I'm totally cool if it's just Vanessa Marshall doing it.
That's what I was actually thinking.
Yeah.
No, I was actually thinking like she could totally do it.
She totally could, yeah. So I mean, hey, that's possible, and it would be awesome.
That would be really interesting.
I was having a whole conversation with Frank from the San Francisco office, one of the video guys, about how much he wants to see Freddie Prinze Jr. play Kanan in a movie, and how that's perfectly possible.
Because Kanan looks quite like him.
Yeah.
Although a little younger.
Yeah, but it's still. But also, it doesn't have to be Kanan at that age.
That's true.
Yeah. So.
There's so many options.
There's options here, yeah.
If you guys aren't watching Rebels,
you should. I think a lot of people will be jumping on board, and
especially if they think it's tied.
Yeah, and I will even say, and I'm going straight up here, guys, with the end of season 1 Rebel spoilers right here, because we had this huge debate over the weekend about covering it and talking about Ahsoka and Vader. But I just did, and the reason we decided we should is they were literally giving out posters that were Ahsoka and Vader fighting each other, and it's all their promotion. And I've already had people say I wasn't watching, but now that I know those characters are in it, now I want to catch up. So, hey, I'm putting it out there. Ahsoka and Vader, there's a lot going on. Catch up.
Okay, I know we have to move on, but how do you feel about a Star Wars movie, no Force?
I like it. I think it's time to do that. And now that we're going to be getting this many Star Wars movies, it's going to be important to shake it up, important to not fall back on... Lightsaber is one of the coolest weapons ever invented for a movie, but you have to be able to deliver without that. And so I think it's a good idea what they're doing to make this the first.
Straight up hand to hand.
Hand to hand and blasters.
Blasters and hand to hand.
Blasters for everyone.
There's not enough hand to hand.
We're going to do some reader email, but before, a couple other quick things I want to talk about. One is, it had been rumored for weeks. But it's finally confirmed that Dominic Cooper is starring in Preacher, that he is Jesse.
Do you love it?
I think, it's not like, I wouldn't like say, oh, that's the perfect person that I'd imagine, but I like Dominic Cooper a lot.
I like him so much.
I think he'll be really good.
He's such a versatile actor.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like whatever it is, he can actually pull it and bring something that you wouldn't have been thinking of to the character, which is honestly one of the things about an adaptation that I enjoy is like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that for this character. Right. That's kind of a new take on who that could be. So I like the casting a lot.
I do too, and it is funny these days. There's so many comic book properties that we're now getting to the point where, you know, he is ongoing playing Howard Stark, and even if Agent Carter doesn't come back, I have no doubt we will see Dominic Cooper play Howard Stark again.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though John Slattery is also playing him in Ant-Man. So it's just funny that we're now at this place where, because I don't know how everyone's deals and whatnot work, but it's like clearly at this point it's like, okay, he'll be doing, it's not a DC hero because it's a Vertigo title that had no connection, but it's still funny that he'll be the lead in this DC Comics based character while he's still playing Howard Stark in the Marvel stuff. But there's a lot going on, you know.
He's like, I can do anything.
I can do anything. I mean, you know, Stephen Amell is now Casey Jones in Ninja Turtles.
I know.
Which is actually kind of funny because there was so much, you know, people complaining that they weren't going to cross over the movies to the TV show. And that he won't get to play, you know, one day if Green Arrow's in a Justice League movie, it won't be him, which is still a bummer to me too. But it's like, okay, I'll be Casey Jones. You know, there's
making if he has points.
Because I bet
$10 quadrillion.
He probably is forbidden from doing a Marvel movie. But I think that, or even if it's not specific in his contract, I'm sure it would be highly frowned upon, you know, for him to do a Marvel movie.
Do you think that there is some kind of like non-compete between those? Do you think that there really is kind of?
We're getting to the point that if there wasn't, there will be, you know? Because we even talked about, I think we talked in the office, but look, I think Katrina Law would be awesome Elektra, and it makes so much sense with the Knight.
Yeah.
But because of Arrow, it's just like, I think Marvel wouldn't want it, you know? And I have no idea if she'll be made a regular on Arrow. Her part's increasing a lot, so it's a possibility. So maybe she couldn't even do it schedule-wise. But I do think if it's not in their contracts yet, it's about to be, you know?
And there was all the talk when Jamie Alexander, like a lot of people wanted Jamie Alexander as Wonder Woman, and there was a lot of speculation about her contractually not being able to do that, not just because of timing, time conflicts, but because she couldn't play Lady Sif and Wonder Woman.
Right, and so like I think even with Dominic Cooper, and he might not even be under a long-term contract because he's always been sort of a supporting character, although maybe he is. But I do think it helped for Marvel to be okay, whether or not they had to be contractually, but just probably be okay, is that it is nothing connected to the Arrow Flash TV shows or the Man of Steel movie stuff happening. It's just, here's a completely disassociated thing. It happens to be based on a DC published comic book, but it's not the superhero world per se. But yeah, I think contracts are going to get really interesting with all these people, as everything's based on a comic book, just as I dreamed as a child. And I do want to mention one more thing before the reader email, just how things are these days with closure and whatnot, which is it's a comic book specific story, but the fact that Revolution is going to get a DC Comics digital wrap up, which, you know,
which I think, look, I get a lot of tweets about Save Revolution.
There are some passionate Revolution fans out there.
So that may act as a not perfect solution, but soothing balm.
It's something, yeah.
You know?
And again, the only reason this is happening is because Warner Brothers made Revolution and DC Comics and that corporate tie. But I'm sure they paid attention to those tweets, and they're like, okay, there's enough of an audience there. This is a property in our sibling corporation. It had no ending, so why not?
Why not? And it's so disappointing. As I still, I know this is my weekly mention of Sarah Connor Chronicles,
right?
But I would take a comic wrap up of that story. I would devour that.
I think so too, absolutely. Which would probably never.
There is no corporate tie there.
So well, it was, even though the show was produced by Warner Brothers, the Terminator rights.
The rights are so complicated,
so tangled. Warner Brothers has, I don't think at this point, any claim to Terminator. Yeah. Like they still own the home video rights to Sarah Connor Chronicles.
But that's it.
Yeah, but I think it would be way more convoluted, and that's why no one wants to deal with that at that point. Yeah. Whereas Revolution, it's like that's an easy deal to make.
Yeah. I wish it were an easy deal.
I know, same here. And Friedman won't talk about it. He'll never reveal what he's had planned.
Rude.
One day. All right, let's do a couple reader emails here. I'm going to mask your name, and you're very friendly, and you wrote a couple different emails to us. Ajlal, maybe. But Hey, Eric and Roth. As always, I'm enjoying the podcast and eager to listen to it once it comes out. My question has to do with something you guys were talking about on the last podcast about struggling to watch everything that comes out on TV online. I'm a hardcore TV fan. I'm really excited about the third Hero show coming to CW. But being a hardcore TV fan, I don't think I can fit yet another show into my TV queue without quitting my job, abandoning my family, my friends and family, and isolating myself to the front of my television. Welcome to our
there's your
world.
answer.
Yes. I wanted to ask you guys about the idea of Greg Berlanti and crew consolidating these shows and increasing their budget instead of creating brand new shows. I'd rather have a couple of big budget 2-hour superhero team-up specials each season instead of having to follow a brand new show. What do you guys think about this? Love you guys, and Shakma forever.
Oh, love you too. Thank you.
All very friendly. Yes.
You know what's really funny is that my mind immediately went to Heroes Reborn, which I was like, that's not on CW, but now I know what you're talking. I'm sorry.
DC Hero.
The DC Hero team-up show with Adam and the zombie Katie.
Zombie Canary.
And
Captain Cold and all sorts of folks. Yeah.
Now I really hope she is a zombie, now that we've mentioned it. Yeah, I think that as long as these shows are continuing to be successful, that they are going to want to continue to capitalize on that. I think it'll be determined if that... I don't think that should be a full season.
Yeah.
It feels like too much.
Yeah.
You know, it really does.
Especially, we've talked about this on a network that only airs 10 hours of programming a week.
Yeah.
Can you sustain 3 of those 10 hours being interconnected superhero shows?
Yeah,
I think that might be too much, and I could see this show being a mid-season show.
Which I think makes a lot of sense, because it's like, there you get your fix, you know, of the Arrow Flash universe while they're on break.
But I will say that honestly, that idea would never happen. Let's instead just increase the budget, because if you're a corporation, you want more, and you want more for cheap. You know?
You want more for cheap, and then you can sell that those ad dollars.
And CW, who again work on a very different level than the other networks, their ratings overall are lower, but they seem to care much more, or at least they cared earlier than the other networks about the online presence and whatnot. Look, their top 4 shows, I believe right now, I think Vampire Diaries is still in there, but their top 4 shows are Arrow and the Flash, I think Vampire Diaries, and now iZombie, which has done really well and is a lock to be renewed at this point. Again, not a DC superhero show, but a DC Vertigo based.
And
so for them, it's like, especially because they had their struggles through the years, it's like, and these shows are feeding into the Warner Brothers corporate masters who co-own CW and the merchandise and whatnot. They want more, you know?
I mean, in terms of like, and I think it does serve the audience a lot better, because like you're saying, like, how do you add one more show into your week, you know? So I think it does serve the audience a lot better as a bridge series. You still get those ad dollars that are different from these other shows.
Right.
It's creatively probably more satisfying. I mean, 22 of this team up, I don't know.
Yeah.
But several mini missions with one overarching villain or story, that seems to work.
And then the mega crossover with Flash and Arrow, they're going to have to do.
And then at the end, the big crossover with everybody fighting something. Gigantor villain, like whatever it is.
Gigantor was not part of the DC universe,
I know, it was not Gigantor.
Voltron.
Oh my God.
Voltron versus the DC universe. That'd be amazing.
Best crossover ever. Yes.
I don't know if you can beat Archie versus Sharknado.
No, you
which
can't.
Is officially happening.
Archie fights everybody.
I know, and he wins. Archie, he's badass.
But yes, Voltron, and then eventually they'll have to actually face Archie.
Yeah, that's the final boss. So, so that's our answers. We think that they're going to want to give more, but I think we both hope it's a mid-season show, because I don't know about doing 66 hours of DC.
Voltron.
Yeah, unless Voltron's in it, then they can do 66 hours.
There was my friend and I found this Voltron cat. It was like a cat, you know, the cats trees, like the cat trees, like that they can climb in and stuff, but as Voltron, and it's the best thing ever.
It's pretty amazing.
So there you go. We've helped you none at all with your narrowing down your TV selections, but we have suggested a Voltron cat tree.
There you go. And then lastly, Corey, kind of in a way, it sort of spiritually can piggyback off that last question. Corey says, "Hey, Eric and Roth. Why doesn't IGN give more coverage to Grimm, Shameless, US version, and the Trailer Park Boys? All 3 are so damn good, yet IGN barely covers each show, especially the Trailer Park Boys. considering it's a show that has been around for nearly 15 years, thanks.
Because we fail.
Because we fail.
Can I address this for a moment? But I would love Eric heads the TV channel, so he's going to have the ultimate answer to this. But here's several of my thoughts on this matter. Just not to get too inside baseball. There's probably a lot of shows that we would love to touch on more than we do. I'm going to speak for myself. There's certain shows that we almost never do that I would love us to offer some coverage to.
Yeah.
Sundance, I think Sundance Channel does amazing television right now, and we really don't cover it much. I really liked, I haven't caught up, but I really liked what I saw of the Red Road, the first season, Rectify, and things like that. So you are looking at the TV team.
Right. Yes.
Now, we have amazing freelancers
yes.
who write beautiful reviews that we're
yes.
very excited about. So we don't have to do all of that.
Yeah.
But it is this
yeah.
that you see before you
yeah.
right now. And so we have to make choices.
We have to make choices.
And sometimes they are based on our passion and things that we want to advocate for. I can't tell you how many people have talked to me about IGN's coverage of the 100, and that is all due to Eric and his passion for it, which is great. I advocated for a True Detective really early, and I love that, and Fargo. But at a certain point, we have to service our audience and what they are responding to.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate but true. First of all, we are IGN and we have a certain demo, and it's going to lean towards a lot of genre stuff and whatnot, though not exclusively so. And there always are these outliers and shows. Like, it will always be amusing to me how huge How I Met Your Mother was for us. Like, it was one of the biggest shows we covered at the time.
So sometimes there are these surprises.
Right, there are these surprises. But yeah, you know, there's like Shameless is a good example on that list, although Grimm to an extent too. I did episode reviews for Shameless its first season, and there just wasn't the traction there with the audience.
We do try.
We do try, yeah. And right now, The Americans is like so frustrating for me because I think it's one of the very best shows on TV. And yet, and one day, I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to do a whole segment on The Americans at some point, like I did for The 100. And yet, we cannot get our audience to care. Although the show is also very low rated. It's like, I don't, in general, it's like, it's been hard for that show.
Well, and I would agree on, although this show is, Fargo has done very well critically, just won a Peabody and it's like won everything, you know. But the ratings are fine. They're not, you know, bonkers. And for us, it does okay, and I reviewed the whole first season. I'll probably do the second season, depending on how much I feel like I was spoiled on the set. But yeah, it's hard because when you think something is excellent, that's my favorite television show of last year.
Right.
And you want people to get as excited as you are about it, but they just don't always.
Yeah, and I'm going to get even more inside baseball here. The Americans does so poorly for us that I could never justify paying a freelancer to review it.
Yeah.
I review it on my own time because I freaking love it. It's often a late review because it has to be sometimes because there's like I have to prioritize stuff and because it's like it's just that has to wait for other stuff. But I love this show and I want to keep covering it even though freaking no one will read the damn reviews. And so yeah, and then that goes, Corey, to just personal preference because I think Shameless is a really good show too. Why am I not still reviewing Shameless? Because I think Americans is better and there's only so much time in our lives and with our jobs, especially when you're doing stuff as a passion project. Yeah. And Shameless, I've unfortunately fallen like 2 years behind on because we have to keep up with so much for our job.
So much of the other stuff. Like you just have to kill your darling. I mean, there were shows that I was watching this season and that I really enjoyed. I really liked The Affair. I wouldn't put it as one of my top, you know, but I really enjoyed The Affair, and we didn't do much on that at all. Yeah. It just wasn't for our audience so much, you know. I don't know how we can do that. Like maybe. I don't know what we can do to service those things.
We've talked about it, and I'd like to increase the idea of checking in on shows or doing a here's why you should be watching.
Or even just chats here, maybe.
Chats here sometimes. But yeah, like, I mean, of those 3 shows you mentioned, I don't watch any of them regularly. My wife does watch Grimm. I fell way behind on Shameless, even though I love it. And I've never seen the Trailer Park Boys, which is the one you're the most passionate about. But then again, there's only so much time of the day. And like Roth said, we're the entire TV team. So you have to kind of pick your battles. But I've talked about maybe trying to incorporate our freelancers more and be like, hey, if there's a show you love, we're not going to suddenly start doing weekly coverage of it, but do you want to write like a one-off feature about...
But it's also not because we're trying to be jerks.
No.
Which seems to be the response sometimes.
Yeah, but I understand it because people are like, I love this show, and we may or may not agree with that. On some we certainly do, like Shameless, I totally do. But why are you not writing about it more? But yeah, there's just only so much time, and So I apologize, Corey, and we'll look for some solutions, but it'll never be perfect, and we probably will never be your great source for the Trailer Park Boys.
We're sorry.
Yes, we're sorry.
There's a lot of TV.
We appreciate your fandom for it. So that's it for this week. Please follow Roth Cornet on Twitter, Eric IGN on Twitter. We had some good emails this week. Give us more emails, questions and comments to channelsurfing@ign.com. Like us on Facebook, all that wonderful stuff. And Shakma.
Shakma.